is up, everybody? Jeremy here. And guys, I'm very excited for today's interview. We have Rachel Gainsbrugh with us today. And we're going to be talking about not just Airbnb, but luxury Airbnb, because that seems to be the ticket to really doing well and really creating some income and cool experiences. So, Rachel, I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy. What an honor. Oh my goodness. I'm so stoked. As you know, Airbnb, specifically luxury Airbnb, is totally my jam. So can't wait to discuss.
Well, I'm interested to find out first and foremost, how you got into that whole field, because your background is actually that you've been in healthcare for a while. You're a doctor, and you started Airbnb just kind of as a side hustle for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So started Airbnb and short-term rental investing, that's the general term, about 2019, towards the end of 2019. And, as you all can imagine, healthcare burnout is a real thing. And so
Yeah.
wanting to cut back, I'm learning more and more that I think healthcare is fantastic as a part-time situation. You get a breather, a little bit of breathing room. So I had to figure out what is the next step for us? We were approaching a whole different phase, paid off student loans, and we really started to consume a lot of information on investing, specifically investing in real estate. And so I
Hmm.
really wanted to focus on real estate. It's something that I understood pretty straightforward, right?
Hmm.
But when I was looking at the numbers and I was looking at the returns, oh man, they varied widely, whether you're a wholesaler or whether you're looking into doing multifamily apartment syndications or industrial investment or long-term rentals. Well, when I did the numbers on short-term rentals, I was blown away, and specifically luxury short-term rentals. I was absolutely blown away. And so the point of entry is going to be higher typically, right? But
Hmm.
I had to ask myself, well, how do you get into something like this, at an affordable rate? And so that's really how I got started. Just looking at the numbers, the ability to 3x to 15x your revenue compared to the other strategies in real estate investing, I was like completely floored, and I haven't turned back since.
It's interesting you say that too about the 3x or more in terms of revenue, because my father-in-law, for like the last month, he's been out in Los Angeles on business. He actually just got back this week, and my wife and I asked his permission. We're like, so we're gonna redo one of your properties and put it up on Airbnb while you're gone. So I did new floors. We kind of got the whole place all ready to go, and he's making in like 2 or 3 days what he would make in a month on rent, and we've barely had time to make sure somebody gets in there to clean up in between, because there's been so much demand. So it really is pretty interesting, the amount of demand that is. And I guess for you then, Rachel, like, given there is a greater opportunity for revenue, but at the same time, it's getting properties and stuff. And I guess for you, like, what did you start looking at? Where did you start getting your education? What were you looking at in terms of like finding properties and locating the right places?
Yeah, so at first I took a stab at doing a little bit of fix and flipping. I was looking at properties within, I would say, one or two states away to see where we could capitalize.
Hmm.
And I quickly realized, you got to really think about your life by design, what type of life you want to design for yourself, especially as you're transitioning into something else, particularly for a side hustle or a different type of asset. And that whole world of fix and flipping or wholesaling, to me, it felt like I was going to get another job, right?
Mm.
Why cut back on my W-2, cut back on my 9 to 5 so that I can work 24 hours a day at another situation? And so started looking in the area. I actually found my very first property nearly in my own backyard. It's a market I'm very familiar with, really great schools. I did all of the analysis. I had spent 2 years analyzing and analyzing and analyzing, and then I pulled the trigger on this one particular property. And so I did start in my own backyard. So that was one property, my very first property in 2019. It's in a suburban area in Georgia,
Hmm.
not a vacation rental area, but a little bit more of the executives. That's who we cater to, those who are traveling professionals, professors. And so a little bit more of a high end look and feel. So it's not millions and millions of dollars or anything like that,
Hmm.
but definitely a higher end, type of property. And ever since then, we've grown to about 18 in different areas, the
Wow.
Poconos,
Well, the
Tennessee.
Poconos is like 15 minutes from me. I'm not very
Oh my
far from the
goodness, yeah.
Poconos.
Oh yeah. Yeah, short-term rentals are hot in the Poconos.
Really? So that,
Yeah.
so that's extremely interesting. So I guess the thing I'm interested to find out. So you started in Georgia, which is cool. I have
Yep.
a great place to travel to. I love Georgia. Marietta is a great
Yes.
place. We love Georgia.
Yes.
And I guess when you the tough thing for a lot of business owners, this is whether it's Airbnb or whether it's anything else, is you get that first thing, and then when do you
Yeah.
expand? And I guess for you, like you mentioned, you have 18 properties now. When did you feel like that first property was successful, or when did you feel like you were ready to expand from there? And it seems like that was only 2019, so at some point it became exponential for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you build out your system and you pretend the first one is a corporation, right?
Hmm.
You create your systems, you really build it out. You have your SOPs in place, and it was hit or miss in the very beginning. I had, virtual assistants help me out with the guest communication, cleaners that have come, cleaners that have gone. We've onboarded and offboarded. You go through those growing pains. But once you've got it dialed in, it's almost like you can install that same system in any other market,
Mm.
right? And so I have a very dialed in system that I can essentially install in any other market. Of course, different markets are going to have their own nuances, different properties, depending on what type of amenities will have their own systems. Like I'm not worried about bears on the beachfront properties in the panhandle of Florida, but you better believe we're talking about bears and trash cans and lockers for the trash cans and bears. It's like, what is this bear situation?
I'll tell you what too, because like we live out in a lake in northwestern New Jersey, so like it's pretty much in the woods. And those bear safe garbage cans, they're a joke because I've watched a bear push one over and sit on the side of it, and then the lid just pops off. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to build out these cages and pour concrete to store the trash. So each market does have its own nuance, but
Hmm.
once you build out the framework and you've built out the system, and I'm so passionate about it because that's what's going to give you the time freedom and the lifestyle freedom to be able to not only enjoy, your life, you can enjoy your business and really
Hmm.
create a life by design.
So when you're looking at that basic framework, then like what things should we be considering? And I'm curious too with like managing 18 properties. Like at this point, do you have somebody that like manages like app communication and stuff for you as well? Because some guests are chatty, some aren't, and I'm sure that's something that would take your time too. But I guess in terms of like what matters to guests when you're creating that SOP, what was the things you looked at?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I have, I call it my 5E system. Of course, I have to look at the market. I have to understand regulations. I have to understand my numbers, right? Because
Hmm.
I want to walk into a market because I like cash flow and I also like equity.
Hmm.
So I am looking at properties that are going to make sense after all expenses are paid. I do have a really robust cash flow and I have a phenomenal amount of equity in the property. And so that's a challenge, right? So you
Hmm.
have to tweak, you have to pivot. I'm like the pivoting like a pure a ballerina these days, right? And
You must
so
have a lot of graphs. I feel like that you have a lot of graphs somewhere.
Excel spreadsheets galore, absolutely. KPIs, all of the things. And so, but what's great about it though, Jeremy, think about it this way. Once you have communicated with your guests several times, those questions are on repeat, right?
Yes.
And once you start to respond over and over again to those same messages, you're essentially creating a mini SOP. You can copy and paste that bad boy and teach someone to respond in your voice because you want to start off, you don't want to just start off handing it off to someone. You want to do it yourself, create your voice because that is your brand. You
Hmm.
want your person who's going to be coming alongside you to continue to communicate in your brand because guest communication is key.
Yes.
Issues are going to pop up, and you're going to address them. And that tone with which you're addressing the issues, because this is life, we're all human, and there's going
Yes.
to be errors. There will always be issues. Just make your peace with that. It's how you address the issues is what matters most to guests. And you can
Hmm.
still get 5-star reviews, even if some of the craziest issues were to occur, if you're able to communicate with the guest and the guest is being reasonable and you can work together, work it out. And so I only get a communication from my team if something has to be escalated. I haven't
Mm.
heard a peep from them, I would say, in about 4 months, to be honest. There was a situation where the guest somehow had a firearm and left it behind, and they were asking, "Hey, can you mail my firearm?" And my team was like, "Ma'am, I don't
I
see
don't
anything
think
in
that's
the
legal.
communication Tell me about it. So she goes, I don't see anything in the communication because we do have that communication. I call it my roll out the red carpet guest communication guide. I don't see anything in the guide about this. I'm like, ah. No, that's not going to be in there. Let me handle that. And I call the police and they had to go to the property to retrieve it. But
Mm.
that's the kind of thing that would be escalated to me. Otherwise, honestly, a lot of the communication is a little bit on repeat over and over again. So it's very, very similar. Same best restaurants, types of restaurants. Oh, I need an extra towel. So my team knows to communicate with my cleaners or the team that's responsible to resupply. Hey, can you please bring a few more towels to this particular unit? So, yeah.
Well, I guess in terms of and now I'm focused on that firearm now, and somebody actually leaving a gun now. So now I forgot what my next question was.
I'm telling you.
It's wild. I can't
I
even
know.
imagine. Oh, I never remember what I was going to ask you. And I'm curious too. Like, do they have like a threshold? Meaning like if something costs over $1,000 for like a repair or something like that, then you call me. Like how does that work for yourself too to keep yourself out of like stuff that would pull your time?
Yeah, absolutely. So typical maintenance tasks, of course, I swipe the card. When it comes to money, I'm swiping the card every time.
Right.
So they don't necessarily call, but when it comes time to make a payment or something along those lines, I'll get the invoice. And then at that point, if I need to call maintenance, I go ahead and call them to ask, inquire, what are these line items about? So ultimately, I'm responsible for anything that requires payment. I keep my eyes on the dollars for sure.
Very cool. Well, I guess
Yeah.
then when you're looking at because really I think the thing that's important that you hit on there because there's a few really important things like one being handling things quickly with the right communication because at the same time you have
Yeah.
to realize you're having people for much shorter term. They do expect you to fix it today or fix it tomorrow or whatever it may be because they may only be there for 3 or 4 days. It's not the same as having a tenant where you're like, we'll get to it next week or whatever it may be. So that speed I could say being very important. You want to say something?
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And this is what I want all of the listeners to understand. Number one, short term rental investing is a hospitality business. It is not your typical landlord tenant relationship at all. So you hit the nail on the head, Jeremy, where you said you can't tell them wait a week. I'm
Hmm.
talking about I need you here within the hour,
Yes.
plumber, electrician, so and so. So definitely. And so that is an expectation that I set for the whole team. They know that we're not going to sleep on any guest issues or guest feedback. And my team of maintenance individuals, they know to come out immediately if they're called upon. And if for whatever reason, I mean, a plumber is fantastic, but if they're on a job, sometimes it takes hours for them to remediate the situation of where they're at. So we do have backup plumbers about two or three deep
Wow.
because if they can't make it within the next couple of hours, I need to speak with the next vendor. And so again, I manage my own properties, Jeremy. I don't hand it off to a property management.
Hmm.
I hire each individual. I have plumbers on retainer or backup contractors and using apps that are out there. There are apps that you can find a plumber real quick. You look at their reviews, you're like, okay, I think you're gonna do, and then you ask them to come out, and sometimes you build really great relationships going forward. And you say, man, you did great work. Could I use you again? And you form a relationship that way, believe it or not.
Well, I want to get back to something you said earlier on too, because a lot of people listening to this are probably thinking about that. Like, this sounds great, and it sounds good to have that cash flow and everything like that. But the thing that you hit on, which I think is really important for people to understand, is for some of these places, you may be buying a place, locating a place, have a mortgage on the place, in addition to, what people are paying you for the stays. And I guess when you were looking at it, um, I guess what is the the equity versus what you're bringing in for places? Is there like a good number to look at, or do you have like a rule of thumb for yourself on that one?
Yeah, so right now it's a little bit dicey, right? With the real estate market, it's like mine
We
equals
got
blown.
very lucky. My interest rate on my house is like under 3%, but like people buying a house this year, good luck.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it. But there's still hope out there, and I see some great lending products that are out there that are still kind of staying competitive. But
Sure.
the 2.75 and the 3%, just go ahead and kiss them goodbye for a minute.
Yeah.
and just take a breather. It's going to be a little bit higher, and that's where we're at. And so for me, I use two calculators. If I'm able to leverage something like a 10% home loan, a second home loan, which is a vacation rental loan, essentially. Oh, I love those because my price of entry is really low, and then I'll calculate the revenue based on a cash on cash return. If I can leverage something like a 10% loan. But if I'm stuck and I
So does
have a
that mean they
minimum,
lend you like 10% of the value of your current home? Is that how it works?
no, your
I've
down
never heard of that
payment is
product before. That's why I'm curious.
okay, sure. So it's a second home loan. It's a vacation rental second home loan. And so it's backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. So it's a government backed loan.
Hmm.
And you put 10% down on the property. Typically, when you're thinking about investments in the real estate world, investment properties are about 20%, 25%, 30%.
Yeah.
But
Otherwise, you have
this
to pay like the insurance fee then if you have like an under 20% deposit.
Yeah, yeah. So what's great about the 10% down, you're coming in really low. You get to hang on to your cash because you're going to need some cash to get started, right? We got to furnish and do all the things. And then you can go ahead and get started with 10% down. And
Mm.
so those are great for those who are working W-2, you have a work history, all of that. But say you don't have a W-2, you're a business owner, you may not qualify for something like that. So there's other products out there. So if you have to put more money down, like a 15, 20, 25, 30% down, I use another calculator called a cap rate. And so for the cash on cash, the first one, if I'm putting down, only 10%, I like my cash on cash to be about 30%. Or higher. In the past, I've been able to get 40 and 50%, meaning the money that I put into the deal in 2 years, I will have gotten all of that back,
Mm.
right? 40 or 50% cash on cash, meaning in year one, I will have made 50% of all of my money back. Year two, I would have made all of my money back in terms of cash on cash. Cap
Wow.
rate is a little bit different. It's your net operating income is the amount of money that is coming into you net divided by the property value. And cap rate, I am looking at a reasonable cap rate right now for me. A great one actually is 10% is the cap rate. And
Hmm.
so those are two numbers I look at. But essentially, before prices went all the way up, I like my revenue to be able to pay off my property in 5 years. So
Hmm.
whatever the revenue is and the purchase prices, I prefer that estimated revenue, and I do a lot of future pacing and predictive revenue algorithm and graphs and all of that. I like that to be greater than, I like it to be able to cover the entire mortgage in 5 years or less.
That's really interesting because the reason I ask is because I worked for this woman, gosh, like 10 years ago now, and she was an incredible mentor, like somebody I worked for before I started my company. And one of the things she always taught me is when you're looking at pricing something, it should be pretty much double what it costs you because by the time, you do the project and everything else, you're going to find you're going to make actually 25% of what you thought you're going to make. So you have to kind of like overcompensate for that. So I was just kind of curious to see, like, when you're looking at kind of what it's costing you versus what you're charging people. I was just kind of curious in that model because to me it always made sense from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that, Jeremy, because this is why I focus on the luxury. And so look at it this way. I focus primarily on 5 to 8 bedroom homes, okay? And I know, I'm a little girl from Haiti.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, who is paying $1,000 a night to stay in a property? Who's paying 1,500 a night? Well, I'll tell you who. Of course, you have the execs, the celebrities, but you also have those multi-generational multi-families. And so
Hmm.
and that is who I serve the most. That's my favorite guest avatar
That's what we
is
did in
those
Miami. Is we
traveling.
traveled with a friend, and there were, I think, 8 of us there because it was 2 families. So we paid a lot more, but we needed a house for a lot of people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you have your friend, they're paying, and I also travel with my parents, and then my sister and her spouse, my brother, his spouse, their kids, a couple of dogs, and those two random cousins that somehow make it on the trips every year. It's like, where did you come from?
You're like, who
They don't
invited
show
them
up
this
to
time?
any.
I didn't invite them.
I didn't invite them. Well, when you split that risk amongst all of them, that $1,000 a night doesn't feel like $1,000 a night anymore. They're there
Hmm.
7 days. It might be $1,000 for the whole 7 day situation. And so that is still a great deal for that type of situation. And so you can just kind of stretch it out. They can, explore the property, enjoy it. You're getting paid handsomely, and they're getting a nice spacious space that they enjoy, and they could really spread out and really have a great time. And so I have fun with it. I absolutely love it. That's my lifestyle. That's how I love to travel and just bring everyone along, get a whole caravan, and to be able to serve others who are in my situation is just an absolute joy.
Well, and now I have to ask you this, Rachel, because the thing I really like about you, and I've gotten this in through this whole conversation and through our interactions before as well, like you have this ability to not just think big, but think big in a way that you're making things beautiful. Do you get what I'm saying? Like you're trying to like it's almost like an art. And I guess for you, like, what inspires you to think that way?
You know what? I That was really important to me as I created out this niche, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. It was really important to me to design something that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to come from one situation, jump into another, and it becomes a drudgery, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt as though I had an empty canvas. How do I design something that I don't need a vacation from? And this
Mm.
is essentially what I've created with this business. And so utilizing my ability to be creative, actually cutting back on some of the things that really were taxing and stressful. I took a
Sure.
step back from the healthcare and cut back on that, and it allowed me a canvas to imagine, to create, to just paint on this canvas. And I found my love. I found something that I absolutely love to do. I love hosting others. I love when the guests talk about the little local honey sticks, that are on the property, all the little extra special touches. I absolutely obsess over it. There's a certain point I have to say that's enough. Step back, take a step back. But I'm super passionate about it for
Mm-hmm.
multiple reasons. Of course, it's giving me the freedom that I absolutely desire, and that's one reason I love it. But the experiences that I hear back from guests as they enjoy and explore the property, I mean, there's nothing quite like it. And so just kind of reframing it, and for me, and nothing wrong with all of the other aspects of real estate, right? Nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with that. But multifamily apartment buildings, please, guys, if you're investing in that, don't get offended by this, but it doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies, right?
Yeah. Well, because it almost
But
like the thing I get, and I was trying to figure out how to explain this. Like, it almost seems like aesthetics are a really big part of your life and how you see things. Do you get what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
you kind of see and create the beauty in things. Do you get that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's surprising to me, Jeremy, because it's not something I tapped into
Mm-hmm.
prior to getting into this. And so the design, I absolutely love and adore the design. It's something that I kept my eyes on, but I never really tapped into until really getting into short-term rental investing. So I absolutely love it. It gives me the warm and fuzzies, all the little touches. I love it.
So let me ask you this then, Rachel, because one of the so I have a book coming out in June. It's called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. It's based on like the over 1,000 interviews I've done, and one of the biggest things I've seen is a lot of people, they initially aren't passionate about what they do, but they work at it and they kind of create all these plans and formulas and ways to do it, and then they find their passion because they become so good at it. Is that how you've seen, kind of how this whole Airbnb space has become for you? Because it seems like you've just got everything down, and then you've brought passion into that.
Absolutely. And what I think was key, although I was, getting my dipping a toe, figuring it out, obsessing a little bit over some things, but I took a leap of faith, and I started, right? I just
Mm-hmm.
started. And believe it or not, we were wildly successful from the very beginning, despite what was going on in the world. We continued to be wildly successful. And so several individuals in our circle who saw that, who heard of the good, the bad, and they're like, oh my goodness, you're really good at this. And that kind of reinforced it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And they themselves asked, can you help us? That right there was the secret sauce for me, Jeremy. Being able to
Mm-hmm.
teach someone else how to do it and watch them succeed as well. I was like, holy smokes, this is phenomenal. And watching them walk into this and step into their own passion with short-term rental investing, and then teaching another, and then teaching another. And so there's nothing like it. There's nothing quite like it. And so for me, it's a combination of not only doing the thing, but showing others, especially burnt out, busy healthcare professionals, how to do the thing also. That is the cherry on top for sure.
Well, for people listening, they're interested, they hear it, they want to create something for themselves, they love your passion, and they want to connect with you. How's going to be the best way for our listeners to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one question that I often get asked, Jeremy, is like, well, how do I find out where to invest? Is it in my own backyard? Is there a city? Which cities have the most profitability? Because I'm very much into, let's leverage our time in the most effective way. Let's look at the top cities and work from there. So, I have a free gift to everyone. If you go to 75gems.com, you're going to get my personal list of the top 75 US cities to invest in. And I literally go off of that list and I bounce around to different regions to find property within that list. And if anyone wants to connect with me every week, I do a live in my little Facebook group on rachelbnb.com. If you go to rachelbnb.com, you'll have access to those lives.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to grab that list of 75 cities for myself as well, because now that we've got the Airbnb bug here, it's I'm interested in checking it out. So Rachel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you so much, Jeremy. Thank you.